I'm Joanna Garzilli. You're watching Life Stories. Today, my guest is Mike Cernovich, filmmaker, author, and journalist. Mike, welcome to Life Stories.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to dive right in. We're going to start at childhood. Between 4 and 6 years old, what is the most impactful memory that comes to mind?
Impactful memory is hard because I don't know that I have a formative memory from that age. I do remember being in kindergarten and sitting on this big mat. It had the ABCDs on it, and all the kids would sit on a different letter. But otherwise,
What letter did you sit on?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't have much of a memory before first grade. Then I have a memory. So childhood memories before I would say 6 years old, not much stands out.
So kindergarten, right? That's when you're first, when you really started to have a sense. What was the primary feeling that you had on a day-to-day basis at that point?
I would say I always felt a little bit isolated, a little bit, a sense of disconnection probably. There's, when you hear people talk about, and I learned now it was introversion versus extroversion, but I just had a sense of I didn't necessarily belong, and I didn't dislike people. People didn't dislike me, but I didn't feel, I'll give you an example. When I was in the first grade, during a break, the teacher we had records back then, and she would play music and the kids would all get up and dance. And I just sat there and thought, why are people dancing? This doesn't make any sense to me. It seemed weird. So I just very often felt that other people were very strange and unlike me.
At what point in your childhood did you feel peaceful? Did you feel that you belonged?
Never. No, I didn't have a particularly nice childhood. I didn't have a particularly enjoyable childhood. And I always felt a sense of these other people are just strange to me. It's hard to explain. It's alienation or something.
What's the worst thing that happened to you in your childhood that you turned into a positive experience in your life today?
Well, I had a number of things in my childhood where I was the fat kid kind of growing up. It's like a proverbial thing. So I got picked on and bullied for that. And then my family was quite poor, and my mom had bipolar, so she would sometimes be in various states of mania at the time. It used to be called manic depressive, or she would be in a state of depression. And so it was always very weird as a child.
You said your mom had a mania there. At that time in your life, how did you process that? How did you get through that?
Well, I hated being a child. Probably a lot of people look back to their childhood with nostalgia, and I didn't like it. I had no power, no control over my own life. I had a sense that we were poor. I knew we were poor, but there was nothing I could do about it. So I was, at a very young age, had a sense of, like, we were poor in a way I think that other kids maybe wouldn't have had, and realized there was nothing that I could do about it. So most of my childhood was spent with a profound sense of we're in a kind of bad place and there's nothing really that I can do about it.
At what point did you start to, where you said the word power, did you start to realize that you had control over your circumstances and to feel good?
Well, that hit me definitely. There were a number of arcs. One was when I was picked on all the time. It was pretty bad. And then I started training martial arts, and I wasn't very good at first.
What sort of martial arts were you doing?
I did taekwondo and boxing, and I wasn't very good. But then it takes a while, right? First year you don't really notice anything. And then I got pretty good and fought back pretty hard, and then you started to see that there is a process to this. Okay, you apply yourself, you work hard, you can overcome adversity through that way, through putting work in and finding a method and system that worked.
So finding that system that worked, where did that lead you to?
Well, it always led me to a sense of, so I was bookish, So there was always a sense of, well, I'll just go to the library and read a book. I'll just figure it out. And I notice a lot of people, they don't, especially because I do mindset work and other things, people just ask me really dumb questions. And there's no more polite way to say it, where I just think, why
Give
would
me an
you,
example of a dumb question.
like how to start a blog, right? You can go onto Google, how do I start a blog? And you can find 10,000 different answers. And the idea that you would ask me, how would I start a blog? It's such a lazy, maybe dumb is the wrong word, it's just such a lazy question. And I learned that if I wanted information, I could find the information. If I applied the information, generally speaking, the information would work. So then you learn how to curate good, accurate information that's reality-based. And you learn you have to apply the information to your life. And that was sort of the story of the rest of my life.
What was an impactful book for you all those years ago that still sticks with you in all that you're doing?
Well, as a kid, I just read a book, Better Boxing for Boys. It was some little, thin book or something in the library. And there's quite a lot into throwing a punch. Most people cannot throw a proper punch. They punch from the arm. And there's actually a technique to it. And for me, when you learn how to throw a punch, most people have never been hit really hard in the face by a proper punch. You get hit arm punch or some kind of shove. And there's an expression on a person's face where, like, a man would try to start a fight with you, and you can tell, okay, this person has never been hit in the face before. And I remember I was, I would say 5th grade maybe, and I was just getting hassled by some bully. This is public school, you just get hassled. And there was no reason. I was quite shy, kept to myself. I wasn't provocative or anything like that. And this kid was just like hassling me. He was like a bigger kid. And he got into my face, and I remember my leg just started shaking, so I just went and blasted him in the face, and he fell down and his whole face was red, and he started crying. And he was, for the grade school, like the toughest kid in the grade school or something like that. And he had just blasted him. And there was just a sense of, you just have to punch people back, because I'd done nothing wrong. There are things that have happened to me in my life where I could understand, yeah, I can get why people wouldn't like me. But you're just a kid, and your number comes up, and you realize you punched someone in the face before. They've never been hit like that, and the whole reality changed, and people left me alone for the rest of the school year.
And obviously, this is when in life one is being provoked, right? So that for you is something that when someone comes at you.
Yeah, the hassle, just hassling a person for no good reason. There's oftentimes a good reason to provoke a person, because we're all flawed, and we do things wrong, and if people are sort of criticizing something you've done, that's part of the human condition. But I was just a kid minding my own business, and bigger kids would bully me, and it never made any sense to me.
What would you say to someone that says, oh, well, going and hitting someone, a punch, whether it's physical or metaphorical, is not the answer. It needs to only be non-violence. What would you?
I wish. Yeah, I wish. I absolutely wish that as a kid I didn't have to get into fights with people. This is not a fun thing when you're a child, having to watch your back, because if you punch someone back, it's never like over. You watch the movies and people get in a fight and then everything's good. No, then that kid's got 2 other kids and his friends come in, or maybe 3 jump you, and it's a never-ending cycle of violence. So I wish that it weren't the case that sometimes you had to punch people, but it's just a simple reality. They hassled me. They weren't going to stop hassling me, and they didn't hassle me anymore after that.
How has that theme continued in your life where you are today?
Yeah, 100%. If people come after me metaphorically, they aren't prepared for anyone to fight them back metaphorically, because I don't need to use violence, but I can use my words in a very powerful and impactful manner. And people try to say that I would bully them, and I would go, wait, you missed the whole part where they went after my child. Like, for example, there are people who say, oh, that Cernovich went after me for blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, you left out the part where you made photoshopped images of my daughter and put her in literally in sexual positions. And people do something like that, and it's funny, we're getting on their skin. It's like, no, you have no idea. You have no idea what's going to come next for you. And that is a theme that I learned, is that I wish it were the case that people could be civil, disagree, everything would be cool. I don't like violence. I oppose violence. I disavow especially political violence, unprovoked. But if a person is attacking you,
Well,
then
talk to me about your mission. And your mission, what I hear from you is you're a fighter, right? So, and not in the negative sense.
right.
So what are you fighting for in your mission, in your life purpose?
I've never thought of that question before, but you are right. The theme would be that when there's something in your face, you have to fight back against it. And I would say now my mission is primarily my family based and businesses and
Talk to me a little bit about how you met your wife.
We met the last place to meet a person, which is at a bar. I always tell people you should never meet someone at a bar. And then, how'd you meet your wife? I met her at a bar. How'd you meet her? I said, you're going the wrong way. You need to be over here. Just some cheesy line that worked. And that's the worst advice to ever give someone, though. Don't go meet people at bars. I know all these wonderful women who are single, and they go to bars, and I go, what are you doing at bars? They go, well, you met Shauna there. I go, that was a lottery ticket. The probabilities of that are low. Don't do that.
Do you ever fight in your marriage?
No, we have I learned from my first one. So this is, you learn to, going forward, be your true authentic self, and then you fight a lot less. But people are afraid to be the authentic self because you might be rejected. But Chris Rock had a comedy routine where he said, when you're on a date, you're not dating a person, you're dating that person's agent, right? Here's me, and what do you kind of want to hear? I want to tell you what you want to hear because I don't want to face rejection, and we all fear rejection, of course. It's absurd to say we're not, but you realize that you're going to be rejected early or later because your authentic self is eventually going to come out, and then that's what leads to the friction of fighting. So, and right from the beginning, it just took a radical honesty approach to the relationship and what I wanted, and part of it's knowing what you want to do, but just this is the way that I anticipate living my life. And if you like it, cool. If not, that's cool too.
How did your documentary Hoaxed come about?
I'd made a film about free speech in 2015, and I felt like I'd always wanted to make a film, right? A great film. And I felt like I left something on the field, right? It just, the production level wasn't where it was. We had a great guest, a very diverse cast of people, and it just didn't come out the way it should have, though. It didn't feel like a real film. It felt like a YouTube documentary or something. And I said, I'm going to do a film where I just laid on the line, but I wanted to not do a partisan film. I want to do a film where I talk to a lot of people. So, for example, we talk to right-wing people, but we also talk to Black Lives Matter, and quite fairly let him present, because I believe in letting a person present the strongest version of their argument, even if I don't agree with it. So I said, okay, what's your strongest argument here? And then people can watch it and get multiple points of views and realize that, well, in the case of Black Lives Matter, a lot of times people say, oh, they're rioting, or they'll say, well, why don't black people march when there's gun violence? It's like, no, but they do. The images aren't promoted by the media, though, because the media wants to see the fires or when things go really wild. And then people think, well, therefore they're not doing anything peaceful. Be like, no, that's 99% of what they do is. And in a way, the people think fake news is a left-right wing thing, but there are many civil rights groups that are themselves victims of fake news because they don't get, when they're doing the right things, doing good things, and they're positive, press doesn't want to cover that because people don't want positive.
You specialize in mindset. What do you feel is a core quality, value that we as humanity could integrate to be able to make this world a better place?
The number one is resourcefulness, a belief that if you keep looking, you'll find the answer, because that resourcefulness is embedded with optimism, hope, vision. Okay, what's going on? Like, what's the problem? Because most people have a fatalistic attitude, mindset. Oh, I got broke up, I'll never meet anybody. Or, oh, I lost my job, it's it, I'm going to go bankrupt and be destitute and be living on the streets or something. And the answer to that is just, okay, calm down. We'll figure it out. And I've always had this sense, and that probably is because in the childhood that sort of mindset was rewarded, is if you just patiently apply yourself, you look for the right answers, you apply the answers, then you're not going to get out of the hole in a day or a week, maybe even it'll take you a few years, but you will succeed in whatever area you want to succeed. But it might be 10 years.
Do you use a lot of visualization as well?
Yeah, you have to drill the conversations in your head. There's a sense where whenever I interview or do some kind of media thing or do something, I'm always prepared because in my mind I'm always running questions through or attack vectors through, or what if that says that, or what if the person says that, or what if this happens. And in my mind I'm always drilling potential situations and wargaming things out and making the decision trees and mind maps.
What percentage of space do you allow then for something to come through you that you didn't plan for?
Well, once you hit flow state, that's where you achieve artistry. Most people want to be artists the first day of art class. And they say, I'm too good to draw this figure. I'm too good to do this. I'm too good to do it this certain way. But mastery comes from the basics. And then once you have the basics down, you're not self-referential. Most people, their whole time, oh, what if they're wrapped up in their head because they haven't prepared. So if you're worried about, oh, I have to get down to this lower level here, then you're never going to rise to the super high levels or have that magic, the je ne sais quoi, that X factor that comes out, because you're not drilling the basics. You're not strumming the guitar just regularly.
What is the number one basic that we could all implement to manifest dreams, goals, mission?
Well, what physiological, mental, recognize that the processes are one and the same. Everybody should focus more on their breathing. I do the Wim Hof breathing course and the cold water training, and quite regimented, and the sets and the rounds and everything like that, because if you control your breathing, you're never going to be stressed out. People understand. You can always tell when someone has nervous energy, and then their thought, it's a cascade, it's a cycle where, oh, my thoughts are running out of control, and I'm breathing hard, my shallow breathing, I'm not getting enough oxygen in my brain, and then they're just not present, they're not grounded. And the number one skill people could learn is just take the Wim Hof breathing course or watch the videos and do the exercises. And because that's most of our physiology we can't control. So for example, if my heart's going thump, 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 I can't say, hey, heart, slow down, right? Maybe at a deep yogi or something, right? But I can't just say, slow down, heart. And if you feel an adrenaline spike, I can't just say, adrenaline, go away, cortisol, go away, oh my God, I'm amped up. But I can say, oh, am I breathing through my diaphragm? I'm breathing into my stomach all the way into the bottom, fully oxygenating myself. That's one of the only physiological, now you can't stop breathing. You know, there's to it, but that's the only parasympathetic response that we can control. And then you find out once you control your breathing, you control everything else. Because if your heart rate's going too fast, and then you breathe quickly too, then your heart rate's going to increase. But if your heart rate's breathing too fast, then you control your breathing, you bring it down, then you become calm, and then your heart is going to slow down too.
Talk to me about legacy that you're creating. Obviously, you've had a massive impact already in the world. Some would see that as very positive, some would see it as very negative. What for you, what are you creating and why?
Well, right now, and you make a great point, which is positive and negative. I was less conscious of my energy and how I was trading negative energy in the world. And just by being mean to people or talking to people in a certain way, or maybe making fun of people in a way that just wasn't mature, and not only not mature, but not valuable towards the conversation. And lately I've been focused on unity for people who want it, because when I look around there, and it's not political, it's both sides, people are losing their minds. I can't believe when I watch things, they're hyperventilating and they're stressing out. And there was even a recent poll from Gallup which said that Americans are the most stressed out for as long as they've ever done it. but the times have never been better by objective measures. And I'm interested in having conversations with people who want to sit down like adults and not scream at each other and yell at each other. There's enough people doing that.
Yes, so then with the political arena, there seems to be a lot of screaming and shouting at each other.
Yeah, and that's why I do much less, socio-political, or even this. Hoax is a very positive, pro-human film, which says, hey, we're being manipulated to feel this way. We're being manipulated to be angry. We're being manipulated to hate each other.
So, you're putting this message out there, and yet does one need time away from social media, away from hearing outside news? How do you feel about that?
For most people, social media is clearly a net negative, and it's something that should be controlled or viewed as it should be viewed as alcohol. Is the way I view social media. You come home, you have a little scotch or mojito or something, a little wine, that's fine. But if you're getting drunk and you're just becoming a part of your life and it's hindering your life, then it's a problem. And I'll give you an example about social media, even though it's not political, but just to tie it together is I'm 41, and when I was 18, I didn't know any girl who wanted to get plastic surgery because nobody knew what plastic surgery was. And because I have kind of a broader audience, I have some younger fans and everything, I'll see girls 19 years old talking about fillers and stuff. And it's like, no, fillers are what you do when you get a little older and your cheeks sucked in and something. It's not something 19-year-olds should even be thinking about. And these girls, I guess they're women, 19, 20, whatever, they're obsessed with every little nitpicky thing. Oh, and they're quite attractive too, which is bothersome. And that's because if you're on social media, you're only seeing an idealized version of 0.000001%. And then you're being manipulated too, of course, by the advertising agencies and people who make these kind of products, whether you know it or not, to now you're wanting fillers because now you're a consumer now. And by the way, I'm and the irony here is I'm pro plastic surgery, but not pro completely modifying your body when you're 19 years old. Right.
So it's when you have a certain point of view and then people take it out of context, which is what you were speaking of earlier.
Yeah, where people struggle with like nuance or struggle with how I simultaneously say I'm pro plastic surgery, but you people are losing your minds about the plastic surgery in the sense of, the world does treat you better if you're better looking. This is unfortunate, but it's true. So taking care of yourself, sure, is good. If there's a facial feature that maybe is really holding you back or really bothers you and you'll feel better about yourself and more confident, great. I know so many people have had nose jobs and they feel so much better about themselves, great. But when it comes to the point of, I'm going to nitpick now and I'm going to find one little speck here, one little thing here, and then that's all they focus on, that becomes a depressive spiral because they're focusing on a perceived imperfection, and then they define themselves based on what they focus on, and now they think, oh, I'm imperfect, I'm flawed, and then they sit around for hours a day thinking about all the plastic surgery they need.
Who are 3 people that are the wind beneath your wings?
I would say my daughters, for sure. That's a safe answer, but it happens to be true. I have a daughter who's 4 months, and she's cool and all, but it's different when they're a couple of years old. And my older daughter is 2.5 years old now, and she definitely...
What are your daughters' names?
Rumi and Syra. Rumi's the youngest, and Syra's definitely like my road dog. We hang out, we goof off, and everything like that. So she certainly inspires me more than any other person in life, for sure. My wife's great and everything. Like, we have when I see the relationships people, so I know there's 2 layers. One is I know objectively we have a great relationship, but when I see the kind of stuff other people, just the nitpicking and there's a vibe where you sit down for dinner and you can just tell both people are on edge, and the passive aggressiveness on both sides. We don't have any of that. So it's a great relationship, but she would know, my wife would know that my daughter is just everything to me.
So your wife and daughters, you would say, are those 3 people?
Yeah, I give them all 3. I don't know that there's any other person that would necessarily lift me up. When I was younger, I was definitely a huge fan of the young Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he was, say, 27. The older Arnold, he just got a little safe. He's wanted to be liked, I think, a little bit too much. And his message changed, and he went from very much go out, live your life, be strong, make it happen, to trying to avoid all these tripwires that any public figure would have. So he's gotten boring.
So that leads me to my last question. What do you want to be remembered for if you're going to be really true to the message and go all out?
Yeah, I've always told people my book on mindset, Guerrilla Mindset, is the most honest book that I've written. Because half the time I'm doing satire, like meta commentary, or there's tongue-in-cheek. And the most authentic expression of myself is definitely Guerrilla Mindset. And that's been, all over the world. And I wanted to write a book that somebody would find 20 years from now, and I wrote that book, and that's my legacy work, which is almost depressing because you're
Makes me think of Terminator, right?
Yeah,
Like John Connor.
Yeah.
So you've written that book for...
Exactly, the time traveling. Yeah.
Very good. I'm Joanna Garzilli. You're watching Life Stories. Today, my guest was Mike Cernovich, filmmaker, author, journalist. You can watch episodes at lifestoriestelevision.com and also at EverTalk TV. Thank you so much for watching. Tune in next time.